Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Manoj Singh Rana, and with me is Reshma Tiwari, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches Rashtriya Jal Jeevan Kosh, says Jal Jeevan Mission is a movement to empower women and rural India through active participation from everyone. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar holds bilateral meeting with his Colombian counterpart Marta Lucía Ramirez in New Delhi. Agreed to promote trade and investment in various sectors. Joint military exercise Surya Kiran 15 between India and Nepal ends today. India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage crosses the 90 crore mark. The death toll due to COVID-19 surpasses 5 million worldwide. And India pays homage to Mahatma Gandhi and former Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri on their birth anniversaries. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and also help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has described the Jal Jeevan Mission as a movement to empower women in rural India with Jan Bhagidari and active participation from everyone. Mr. Modi was interacting with Gram Panchayats and Pani Samitis across the country on the Jal Jeevan Mission through video conferencing on Saturday. Mr. Modi said Gram Panchayats have been provided over 2,25,000 crore rupees to facilitate access to water and promote cleanliness. He said clean water and water scarcity are global issues. He urged the people of India to realize the importance of clean water.
सरकार द्वारा विशेषकर जल और स्वच्छता के लिए 2.25 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा की राशि सीधे ग्राम पंचायतों को दी गई है। आज एक तरफ जहां ग्राम पंचायतों को ज्यादा से ज्यादा अधिकार दिए जा रहे हैं, दूसरी तरफ पारदर्शिता का भी पूरा ध्यान रखा जा रहा है।
The Prime Minister said 5 crore households have been connected with water connections since the launch of the Jal Jeevan Mission in 2019. On the occasion, the Prime Minister launched the Rashtriya Jal Jeevan Kosh. He also launched the Jal Jeevan Mission mobile application for improving awareness among stakeholders and for greater transparency and accountability of schemes. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Saturday held a bilateral dialogue with Vice President and Foreign Affairs Minister of Colombia, Ms. Marta Lucía Ramirez in New Delhi. The leaders held a comprehensive dialogue covering sectors such as health, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology and space. Regional and international issues of mutual interest were also discussed during the meeting. Dr. Jaishankar underlined India's priorities with respect to the UN reforms. There has been a steady growth in bilateral trade between India and Colombia, which stood at $2.27 billion in 2020-21, despite the disruptions caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Both the sides agreed to work together to further promote trade and investment in energy, IT, pharmaceuticals, and automobile sectors.
Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has said a resurgent India is ready to take on the responsibility of being the front-runner in the revival process at a time when the whole world is coming together to recover from the pandemic. The minister was inaugurating the India Pavilion at Expo 2020, Dubai, which will showcase India's vibrant culture along with the diverse partnership opportunities. India-UAE trade was valued close to $60 billion in 2019-20, with UAE being India's third largest trading partner and second largest export destination after the US. UAE is also the 8th largest investor in India, having invested $11 billion between April 2000 and March 2021. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on India's growth story at Dubai Expo, as it looks up to the world for assistance. In conversation are Atul Aneja, international affairs expert, and Manas Pratim Bhuyan, journalist.
After a one-year delay due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Dubai Expo, billed as one of the biggest of its kind and being hosted at a cost of USD 7 billion, kicked off on Friday. The expo is spread over an area equivalent to the size of 600 football fields. This is mind-boggling. It is one of the world's first global events in the post-pandemic world after the Tokyo Olympics. The Indian pavilion at the expo is one of the largest, and it will showcase India's vibrant culture along with the economic opportunities that India offers in multiple sectors like health, textiles, infrastructure, services, and more. The theme of India's pavilion is openness, opportunity, and growth. Mr. Aneja, do you think the expo will help India attract investment and act as a catalyst for the region's economy to take off following the pandemic-induced economic slowdown?
I think so. It can go a long way in getting India into another phase of growth. You see, what's happened, Manas, is that we are coming out of the COVID situation. I think that is the reason why this becomes especially important, because now we got to launch the post-COVID phase. And a lot of plans which we had earlier, including foreign investment, were stalled because of the COVID situation. So therefore, this is a new beginning for reviving the Indian economy, in fact, the world economy, and kickstarting it again, firing it again. And Dubai Expo offers a tremendous opportunity because, as you mentioned, it's a massive exhibition which is going to have the world, in fact, descend on Dubai. And with India having such a big pavilion, there'll be a tremendous opportunity to network, to explain India's point of view, and to attract foreign investment. I think this is a massive opportunity which we should not miss. And I think India is extremely cautious of the opportunity it offers of reviving the post-COVID economy. And that is why you see the Prime Minister himself making a statement yesterday, and as did the Commerce Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal. The size of the pavilion which you mentioned is also very significant. It's one of the largest. And finally, the UAE government has given India a prime position, which speaks very well for the bilateral relationship between India and the UAE. So there are several factors which are going well for India. And if we don't have another wave of COVID, I think this will be a seminal moment, a foundational moment to revive the Indian economy through foreign investment and engagement.
Mr. Aneja, you rightly mentioned Prime Minister Narendra Modi's comments yesterday. He described the expo as historic and hoped that it will go a long way in further building India's deep and historical relationship with the United Arab Emirates. So he also said that the expo is also a testimony to the resilience of mankind against the once-in-a-century pandemic. So how do you see Prime Minister's comments?
I think Prime Minister is spot on in assessment and judging the moment we are in. That we had a pandemic which was catastrophic, but we have the resilience to overcome it. And this is a demonstration of that. I think that's a very, very important point which has been made. Which also is important because implicit in this statement is that we now need to kickstart and take this forward. And this is the strategic moment from where we take off. And Dubai Expo will be one of the platforms through which the Indian and the global economy revives and takes off. I think that's the import of the Prime Minister's statement in identifying the moment and judging its historicity in the sense that this is a moment from where we revive on a path of expansion and forward movement, because we have to catch up a lot. And now is the time to do so. And this is the first time when we are having a situation where world over, largely, except for a few exceptions, probably Africa is a major exception, which we can talk separately on some other occasion. But generally, the COVID situation is easing up in the world, especially in Asia. You see Japan opening up. You see Vietnam opening up. Koreans are doing well. India is coming back. And goes a long way for the Asian century itself to come back into its own. And again, the Dubai Expo, being in a West Asian country, would be, when one looks back in history, would be one of those moments where the world economy and people-to-people contact, they take off on a new trajectory.
So India has unveiled a series of economic reform in the last couple of years. Though Indian economy was hit adversely by the pandemic, like almost all countries in the world, Indian economy now has shown clear signs of rebounding. So in this context, do you see India receiving a good amount of foreign direct investment from the Gulf region, with which we have a very, very strong energy cooperation? Do you also think the Dubai Expo can trigger greater economic engagement between India and the Gulf?
I think so, because you see, when the world looks at areas of investment, what are those big economies which can absorb investments, foreign investment on a massive scale? One, of course, is China, but China is having its own problems these days. There's a major power shortages which are coming up over there. The debt issue through its Belt and Road Initiative is a cause of major international concern. So I think, and the very fact that the COVID-19 originated in China, I think that has taken off the shine of China as an investment destination. Also the fact that the Chinese their behavior in the South China Sea and elsewhere on India's borders, relationship with Japan. Therefore, I think if you take overall, the India's image right now is of the right kind, because not only have we combated finally the challenge of COVID-19, but now again we are ready to export vaccines to others. If you see this latest medicine which is being made by Merck, there are 5 Indian companies which are involved in it. So India is a pharmacy of the world, India is a vaccination destination hub for the rest of the world. I think India can leverage that positive image which comes out of the COVID-19 situation. And therefore, and also India has the scale and the size. Ease of doing business is better. We got to get our act together now in making sure that foreign companies who will, have a natural tendency to come to India are given the right kind of welcome, the right kind of breaks, so that it becomes a habit, it becomes a sort of a cascade of investment, and India acquires what we have been talking about, to making India a $5 trillion economy at the earliest, and second, to make India as a manufacturing hub for the world under the Atmanirbhar Bharat slogan and the Make in India slogan. So I think we are at a critical moment right now, and many big things can happen right now. If we play our cards well, we have done the heavy lifting, COVID-19 under control, and Indian economy showing signs of reviving, ease of doing business better. So there are positive signs which have already come. Now we got to encash on this and really go for the jugular and achieve what we have been lacking so far, of really becoming the workshop of the world. And I think there's a big, big opportunity now. And Dubai Expo probably is one of those which will help us achieve those aspirations and goals.
The Expo is taking place at a time when the Gulf region is also facing some kind of turmoil. We have seen the latest round of bitter exchanges between Israel and Iran. We have seen the situation in Syria is still very tense. We have seen, dynamic power equations in the region. So my question is, in fact, how do you see the Expo addressing these kind of issues in a larger perspective? What is the political significance of this Expo? Will it help in some kind of rebalancing of forces in the Gulf? What do you think is the political messaging of the Expo?
I think political messaging is very important, that if we have to have a better life for mankind, then the way forward is collaboration, cooperation, and sharing and co-developing our economies in a globalized atmosphere. I think that sends a very strong message, which is an antidote to forces, let's say, of terrorism, of sectarianism, drug trafficking, gun running. All the negatives are sort of countered very effectively if it can be demonstrated to the people of the region that, look, the way forward is not radicalism. You see, the challenges right now, Manus, one challenge is coming from radicalism. From Afghanistan onwards, you can see that the rise of that. Even countries like, others are the ones, Pakistan for sure, in a way, directly or indirectly promoting that discourse. So that's a big challenge for mankind. If you can counter that by showing that there's an alternate path of economic development and prosperity, that's a big antidote to that. Second thing is, if India leverages, because India has good relations, let's say, with the Gulf countries, it has excellent relationship with Iran, and it also has great relationship with Israel. And I think if India can pull this and provide some momentum to this economic growth and prosperity in a globalized and a fair atmosphere, I think that will accelerate this process of weaning away people away from negativity to a positive path. Now, having said that, this is only one element. of the positive impact. There is need for dialogue and for finding solutions to this intractable problems so far between countries which have different worldviews. There's the Iranian worldview, which sort of contradicts with the way the Saudi Arabians look at the world. And, there's Turkey, which is looking in another direction. And Israel, of course, is on a completely different track. It is a difficult problem, but I do think that the Expo is setting the right example and building momentum towards positivity, which then needs to be cashed upon further through active diplomatic engagement and dialogue to find solutions which are win-win for countries which presently appear to be at loggerheads with each other.
Yeah, in the context of the current geopolitical flux, the Crown Prince and ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, said that the Expo will reflect the ethos of the land, ethos of the United Arab Emirates, as a meeting point for cultures. Important point he made. And India has a strong cultural connect with the Gulf region. Do you think the Expo will also in a way boost cultural and people-to-people links?
I think one of the themes, Manas, is also culture and inclusivity of this Expo. And I think the UAE is such a fantastic example. I have lived in Dubai and I've seen 148 nationalities living together at complete harmony and in prosperity. So Dubai is such a fantastic example of being a melting pot and being open to talent and basically reflecting the commonality of human nature as such, that we may be divided by nationalities, but we can have same values and appreciate each other because basically people all over the world are the same. So I think it's a big melting pot, which is an outstanding example of how people from various religions and nationalities can live together in harmony and not just tolerate each other but celebrate the diversity. So I think that is something which UAE officials have been saying this, and I think they're very right because they've already demonstrated their success story. And it's that example, openness, inclusivity, and finding common ground and agendas. I think that example is something which is not relevant just for the UAE, but I think it's relevant for the rest of the world, that it is possible and it is doable. I think what UAE also did was its respect for talent, because they were like the Americans at a different earlier phase. They just respected talent, which may come from Kazakhstan to India, to any other country, to Philippines, they or to the West. Their focus on meritocracy and shared prosperity, I think that kind of visionary leadership is something which has taken them a long way forward. And I think it's now setting an example for the rest of the world, Manas. I think that's the way to go forward. Of course, UAE is a smaller country, one may say, but I think that's what needs to be magnified at a bigger scale. In India, we have the opportunity to do that, to show to the rest of the world that it is possible to build a diverse nation and be a leading light in the entire global system.
Finally, last question. In fact, what according to you will be the big ticket outcomes from the Expo, and what will be the gains for India from it?
I think it squarely dovetails with our national goals, Manas, which is first is the $5 trillion economy. It can't happen without foreign investment. And that is something which this Expo will greatly help. Second thing is also that it gives us an opportunity to develop further our special relationship with the UAE and with the rest of the region, because we are critically dependent on the region, not just for oil and gas, but for remittances, etc. So economically and culturally, we need to engage with the region. The Expo will greatly further that strategic relationship we have with the region. I think going further beyond the region, because UAE, if you see, is also the gateway to many other countries, many other regions. For example, UAE is now very active in Africa. UAE is active in Central Asia. So I think a special relationship with India and UAE can make UAE as a springboard of giving us an opportunity to work together in other parts of the globe. I think that's the next level which India-UAE or India-Gulf relations, especially India-UAE, I would say, can take forward in a geo-economic and a geopolitical perspective. I think this gives us an opportunity of further deepening our ties and taking it to the next level, not only bilaterally in the region, but in other parts of the world as well. And I think especially Africa is one region where we can work.
Thank you, Mr. Aneja, for your detailed overview of the Dubai Expo and its possible outcome, as well as possible gains for India from the Expo. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Anas. Thank you.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
In Uttarakhand, the joint military exercise Surya Kiran 15 between the armies of India and Nepal ended today in Pithoragarh. 300 soldiers from each side took part in the exercise, which started on September the 21st. During the exercise, soldiers of both the countries shared counter-insurgency tactics, information about weapons, expertise in the field of counter-terrorism operations, and technical know-how to combat IEDs and booby traps. During the exercise, the soldiers of both the countries also destroyed the hideouts of the terrorists. Lieutenant General S.S. Mahal said that the soldiers of both the countries learnt a lot from the joint exercise. The 8th edition of India-Sri Lanka Joint Military Exercise Mitra Shakti will be conducted in Sri Lanka from the 4th to the 15th of October this year. An all-arms contingent of 120 personnel of the Indian Army will participate in the exercise along with a battalion of the Sri Lankan Army. The Defence Ministry said the aim of the exercise is to promote close relations between the armies of both the countries and enhance interoperability by sharing best practices in counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism operations. The exercise will involve tactical level operations at the sub-unit level in an international counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism environment and will go a long way in further strengthening the relationship between both the South Asian nations. This will also act as a catalyst in bringing synergy and cooperation at the grassroots level between both the armies.
India has crossed the landmark of 90 crore COVID vaccinations. Health Minister Mansukh Mandaviya informed this in a tweet. A total of 24,354 new cases were reported in the last 24 hours. Active cases account for less than 1% of total cases and is currently at 0.81%. Worldwide deaths related to COVID-19 surpassed 5 million on Friday, according to news agency Tally, particularly with unvaccinated people exposed to the virulent Delta strain. The variant has exposed the wide disparities in vaccination rates between rich and poor nations and the upshot of vaccine hesitancy in some Western nations. More than half of all global deaths reported on a 7-day average were in the United States, Russia, Brazil, Mexico and India. While it took just over a year for the COVID-19 death toll to hit 2.5 million, the next 2.5 million deaths were recorded in just under 8 months, according to a Reuters analysis. An average of 8,000 deaths were reported daily across the world over the last week, or around 5 deaths every minute. However, the global death rate has been slowing in recent weeks.
India today paid homage to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, and former Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri on their birth anniversaries on Saturday. A series of functions have been organized across the country and by Indian missions abroad. A Sarva Dharma Prarthana Sabha was organized at his Samadhi, Rajghat, in the national capital. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid floral tributes to Mahatma Gandhi on his 152nd birth anniversary at the Rajghat. An interfaith prayer meeting was held at Gandhi Smriti in New Delhi this evening on the occasion of the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. The nation is also remembering former Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri on his 117th birth anniversary today. Prime Minister Modi also visited Vijay Ghat, the memorial of Lal Bahadur Shastri in the national capital, to pay him floral tributes. Gandhi Jayanti was also celebrated at the Embassy of India in Beijing at a ceremony attended by both Indian and Chinese people. Ambassador Vikram Misri paid floral tributes to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, on his birth anniversary at Chintai Art Museum in Beijing. Today's celebration also kicks off a special week of events in the context of celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav as India marks 75 years of its independence. To mark the day, Foreign Minister of Bangladesh Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, Law Minister Advocate Anisul Haq and the High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh Vikram Doraiswamy inaugurated the historic Gandhi Ashram Trust in Noakhali. The renovation of the museum housed inside the Gandhi Ashram campus has been supported by India. The guests visited the Gandhi Memorial Museum and appreciated the unique display of memorabilia and artifacts related to Mahatma Gandhi.
Taiwan has reported that 38 Chinese military jets flew into its air defense zone yesterday, the largest incursion by Beijing to date. The Defense Ministry said the aircraft, including nuclear-capable bombers, entered its air defense identification zone in 2 waves. Taiwan responded by scrambling its jets and deploying missile systems. China sees Democratic Taiwan as a breakaway province, but Taiwan sees itself as a sovereign state. Taiwan has been complaining for more than a year about repeated missions by China's Air Force near the island. Taiwan Premier Su Tseng-chang told reporters today that China has been wantonly engaged in military aggression, damaging regional peace. China has so far not made any public comment. Qatar Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani has said that the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan's move in banning women and girls from education is a step backward. He further added that the Islamic Emirate can learn from Qatar how to run an Islamic system. At a joint press conference with European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell on Thursday in Doha, Al Thani said the move for banning girls' education is disappointing. The recent actions in Afghanistan has been very disappointing to see some steps being taken backwards, he said. Mr. Al Thani also called on the international community to engage with the government in Kabul.
In women's cricket, hosts Australia were trailing India by 234 runs on the third day of the first pink ball day and night one-off test match at the Carrara Oval on Saturday. At stuns, they were 143 for the loss of 4 wickets. India declared their first innings at 377 runs for 8 wickets. Earlier, in a historic moment in women's cricket, Smriti Mandhana became the first Indian woman to score a Test 100 on the Australian soil. With this, she created yet another record of the highest score for a visiting player in women's tests in Australia. The previous highest score was Molly Hyde's unbeaten 124 for England in Sydney in 1949.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post says Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte announces retirement from politics. Globe and Mail writes, Afghan girls stuck at home as they wait for the Taliban plan to reopen schools. Financial Times reports, inflation concerns intensify as cost of energy soars. Wall Street Journal writes, China's power shortfalls begin to ripple around the world. South China Morning Post says, Chinese military sends record number of warplanes to test Taiwan's air defenses. And Sydney Morning Herald reports, Aung San Suu Kyi accused of accepting a large amount of cash and gold.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches Rashtriya Jal Jeevan Kosh, says Jal Jeevan Mission is a movement to empower women in rural India through active participation from everyone. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. J. Shankar holds bilateral meeting with his Colombian counterpart Marta Lucia Ramirez in New Delhi, agree to promote trade and investment in various sectors. Joint military exercise Surya Kiran 15 between India and Nepal ends today. India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage crosses the 90 crore mark. Death toll due to COVID-19 surpasses 5 million worldwide. And India pays homage to Mahatma Gandhi and former Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri on their birth anniversaries. India is celebrating the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Croatia on their Independence Day. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.